Okay, oil sands, really controversial here. So, I really, before we start this topic, I really want to make a note here is that the oil, everything here falls into some form of like one-sided opinion. At least with the resources, some are, some is like this is great and not great, whatever it is. But this one specifically is the most heavily propagandized. So this is the most heavy propaganda. So be critical of what you consume. Everything you are going to read in here, with the exception of one document, is presented in a way to favor one side or the other. Okay? So you need to be critical with what you read. Most people have a politicized their opinion of it, and they are very controversial. Why? It's because the oil itself is generally unclean and it's damaging to the environment, but it's very profitable and it's uh, really helpful for Alberta and Saskatchewan's economy. So at this point, you're going to watch that tar sands video, which you can see below. It's 3 parts, but generally speaking, in summary, it's very profitable, and we have 150 years of reserves in Canada if that oil production that we're currently outputting is maintained. So we have a lot of oil here. There's a lot of interest in that. Many Canadians, not just Albertans, rely on it. For example, if we take a area of high unemployment, for example, Newfoundland, they often fly people out here to work in these mines. Um, but it does leave it in a bad environmental state. So there's 3 barrels of water that we need to use for every 1 barrel of oil. It is also located under a forest. Not all of it, but the stuff we're not mining currently is. So which means we have really high carbon emissions because it's very intensive to get the stuff out, and we also have to ruin a forest to get to it. So we are seeing in a boom region, for example, Fort Mac, baby, Fort. Wait, no. So if we, you've heard of this in Fort McMurray? I actually don't even know the name of it. In Fort Mac, that's what my friends and I always call it. That's a boom region, right? Everyone's going up there. It's the new gold rush. But oh boys, that means expensive to be there. So it's massive inflation for the locals. So if I'm not making big oil money, then well, that sucks for me. I can't live in the place I've lived all my life now. So, what are the oil sands? What are they? So, before we can understand the controversy, we need to understand what they are. So they are loose, unconsolidated mixtures of sand, water, clays that are saturated with a thing called bitumen. This is the oil. So the oil sands are mostly silica sand and over 80%, but bitumen makes up about 10% of it. So bitumen is the oil sands, right? So it's oily sands. That's why you get the name for it. So you can see here's where it is. Now, right now, much of the activity is happening around these regions here. But we can see Saskatchewan does have some, and there's exploration into maybe opening a mine in this area. So what is bitumen? It is a hydrocarbon. It's oil. It has a very long and complex molecular structure. It's low in hydrogen, high in carbon, and contains a high amount of sulfur, heavy metals, and yada, yada, yada. Point being here, it's oil. That's all you need to know. Bitumen is the stuff we want to turn into oil. So write this down. First, I need to extract the bitumen from the oil sands. Then I need to upgrade and dilute that bitumen into a proper crude oil. And then I need to refine that oil into a final product. That's it in a simple nutshell, right? Take it out of it, um, do something with the oil. Turn it into oil. Take the bitumen out, turn the bitumen into oil, and then turn the oil into something. So, so I need to extract it, then I need to dilute it or upgrade it, right? So dilute it or upgrade it. Pure bitumen cannot be pumped long distances. It must either be diluted with condensate, right, to thin it out, or upgraded into a marketable crude that meets all pipeline specification. Finally, it gets turned into a final product through refining. Gas, diesel, jet fuel are the most common uses of this specifically. So, vitamin extraction, it's sorry, before I go into that, it's done two ways. Half of it is extracted via in situ, which we will talk about next. The other half is mine. So if I have half, half gets extracted, half gets mined. They're different. So write this down. So in order to get a marketable product, bitumen needs to be extracted first, which leaves behind the sand, the water, and the clays. So there are two ways to do it. One, surface mining, where the bitumen is gravity separated using hot water, aka I literally dig down, right? Whereas thermal in situ extraction, I pump water down and I send that up. So surface mining, you go down. In situ, you bring it up. This is where you inject the bitumen with steam and you pump it out of the ground. So you can draw a general like you should try and draw this picture in here as best you can into it, even if it's just like a that's fine. So draw this in here, but you can really see again, we surface mine up until about the 100-meter mark. At that point, we use thermal in situ to bring it up. So write this down. This is what we've talked about. Only less than 20% of Alberta's bitumen is actually close enough to be mined. So most of it is brought in situ, which is where the controversy kind of begins. So upgrading this basically means we need to turn into a lighter crude that we can more easily refine. This is called a synthetic crude. So since this bitumen contains a lot of residue, more than like a typical like oil, all of the bitumen we extract must be upgraded. So why is this important? Alberta produces 4 million barrels a day. A day. $250 million. That is Saskatchewan's yearly coal in a day. So when you see Alberta people who are like, I'm oil loving, you see those bumper stickers, you need to understand it is the way of life there, okay? You don't have to agree with it, but you should understand that that is what puts food on the table. So we extract 4 million, but we here can only refine 500,000 a day. And there are complex issues about that. Don't, if anyone tells you we should be building more refinement, we'll own our own oil. It's more complex than that, okay? You don't think the government of Alberta would have come to that conclusion? So don't, if someone has a simple solution for a complex problem, it's because they're simple. So anyways, but we have a refinement cap. This means we have 3.5 million barrels that we can't refine. So what do? We export it to other markets in Canada or the USA, most of which goes to the USA. So if we look at the environment, most of this oil is located in the boreal forest. So write all of this down. So we also need about 270 million cubic meters of water to harvest it. And this water is lost every year. We cannot reuse this water. We cannot reuse this water. So what this means is that 0.2% of Alberta's usable water is used every year. So if I have 100% of my water, next year I have 99.8. Next year I have 99.6. Doesn't seem like a lot. I don't know, 10 years? Oh, shoot, I'm at 98%. Remember, I said 150 years. If we use all 150 years times 2%, all of a sudden, I'm using up 30% of all the water I now can't use in Alberta. I'm down to 70%. So that's the controversy. Canada also outputs 2% of global emissions, but half of that comes from the oil sands, okay? So half of our emissions in the country come from just sucking up that vitamin. So that is the controversy. So why is it controversial? Reason one, the forest. Reason two, the water. Reason three, the carbon footprint. So those are your three controversies that you're going to be working with for the rest of the class. And again, this is not me trying to turn you against the oil sands, but you need to understand both perspectives. Again, I just talked a lot here about why this is good for the economy in Alberta and Saskatchewan, and it has proper good uses for it, right? But we need to understand that comes with a downside, which is these three things. So finally, we also have tailing ponds, which are water reservoirs that store industrial wastewater from oil sands mining. Remember, I cannot reuse this water. This is tainted water. It cannot, in any circumstance, be allowed to leach underground or leach into other groundwater. It must be isolated. So that is what these tailing ponds are for. So the solids eventually go to the bottom and the water eventually does get recycled, but some of that water is lost always. The longer a tailing pond exists, the more sediment it builds. So what is the controversy? Well, we don't know what to do with it after. What do we do with these? What do we do with the solids? What happens if it leaks or leaches, which it has? So again, there is controversy number 4, the waste. So I got 6 questions here. Here's your answers. So what are they? What do they contain? What happens to the water? Are the ponds toxic? Yes, we have 40 years of research on it. That's going to be in a study that you look into it. So yes, we know they're toxic for wildlife and people. How does exposure happen to these, and how would we be able to clean it up? So those are your answers for that. This is based on a reading that you'll do. These are the summaries of it. So are these a problem? Yes and no. I do want to talk about, though, why is it called dirty oil? Because that's the nickname it's given. So sorry, before I go into this, look at the chart at the right here. Where's my bloody, so look at the chart on the right. So this is the greenhouse gases per like oil producing country here. Here we go. So here is Canada. Canada is the most populated crude oil extract. So because it needs that extra refining and because the heavy crude is not a high quality product, and because of the environmental impact, it creates the most greenhouse gases by far in the world. And again, I really want to make a note here. We have to be critical. There's lots of reporting funded by oil industries to make it seem like it's not as dirty or as environmentally damaging as it is. It's very environmentally damaging. But again, it is very profitable. It funds a lot of people in Alberta and Saskatchewan. It keeps other provinces and cities in Canada afloat. So there's good and bad here. You know, from an environmental standpoint, yes, you'd get rid of it. But from an energy needs standpoint, from an economic standpoint, from a, well, shit, I'll starve if I don't have this standpoint, you kind of need it. So there's pros and cons to this. Issue number 5, controversy number 5. Oil sands demand a lot of electricity. Much of the electricity in Alberta comes from coal and natural gas, which have a carbon footprint. So I'm burning coal and natural gas to get the electricity to extract really bad for the environment crude. Ooh, we have a snowball effect, right? So in order to produce barrels in a more greenhouse efficient way, we need thermal nuclear energy. Remember, so we can see here, here's our projected electricity demand. As we extract more and more and more, we're going to need more and more electricity. We can only match this sustainably with nuclear. That's actually good for Saskatchewan because we're the guys who are developing all that stuff. So, in the big picture here, there's been an introduction into this topic. Now, I want to know what your opinion is. You're going to be looking into both sides of it and you're going to share your opinion. Your opinion is not wrong, no matter where you are in the stance. But I don't want to hear lobbyist voices in your voice. I want to hear what your voice is. For example, you might have friends or family or be from the areas that mine this, that extract it, that make their living off of it. That's a very valid reason. You might also be a very staunch environmentalist. That's a very valid reason. But at the end of the day, I want to hear what you have to say, and I want you to use valid evidence for it. Okay? Every article we are going to read is going to be flawed in some shape, way, or form, and it is up to us to piece it together to get a proper understanding.